Imagine 800,000 people gone in less than 60 seconds. Not a war, not a plague, just the ground beneath their feet opening up. No warning, no siren, no chance to run to safety anywhere. One single earthquake wiped out an entire civilization in one morning. And honestly, most people today have never even heard this story. This was not some distant myth or a legend passed down through generations. This happened in real history, on a real morning, to real human beings. The ground literally swallowed whole villages before anyone could scream for help. Trust me, when you hear the full story, it will shake you to the core. Because the worst part is not the earthquake itself, it is what came after. We are talking about the Shaanxi Earthquake of 1556 in central China. And the numbers are so insane that even modern scientists struggle to believe them. But before we get to the full horror of that morning, you need the backstory. Because the reason so many people died is darker and more tragic than you think. If you want the hidden truths behind history's most catastrophic moments, you need History Lab. Hit that subscribe button right now, because this channel goes where others simply will not go. We do not do textbook history. We tell you what actually happened and why it matters. Now, let's get into the story that history class never had the guts to tell you.
It was January 23rd, 1556, and most of northern China was deep asleep before dawn. The Ming Dynasty was at its peak, and the province of Shaanxi was packed with people. Millions of families had built their homes in a very unusual and dangerous way. They carved their houses directly into the soft yellow cliffs called Loess hillsides. These cave homes, known as yaodongs, were cheap, warm, and completely carved from the earth. And that choice, that single architectural choice, is what turned this quake into a massacre. At around 5 in the morning, a magnitude 8 earthquake ripped through the region without mercy. The Loess cliffs did not shake, they simply collapsed, burying every family alive inside them. Entire communities vanished in seconds, swallowed by the very hills they called home for generations. And here is where it gets really disturbing. The earthquake did not stop at one shock. Aftershocks kept hammering the region for months, destroying whatever survivors had managed to rebuild. To this day, that number makes the Shaanxi earthquake the deadliest in all of recorded history. Wait, this next part shocked even the historians who spent their careers studying this disaster.
The earthquake hit a region that was already suffering from serious drought and famine beforehand. People were already weak, already starving, already pushed to the very edge of survival. So when the quake struck, the population had zero physical resilience left to fight back with. The Ming government's response was slow, disorganized, and completely overwhelmed by the scale of the disaster. Relief supplies took weeks to arrive, and by then, thousands more had died from exposure and thirst. No one in power truly understood the full scope of what had just happened to their own people. But the truth about this earthquake is far darker than just the body count alone. Chinese scholar Qin Keita survived the disaster and wrote one of the only first-hand accounts ever recorded. He described the ground rolling like ocean waves, mountains crumbling, and rivers reversing their natural direction. He wrote that the sky turned black with dust so thick that day looked exactly like night. People ran into the open fields, but even the flat ground cracked open and swallowed them whole. There was truly nowhere on Earth safe enough to stand during those terrible 60 seconds of terror. And here is the part that no one talks about when they mention this earthquake at all. The death toll percentage in the hardest-hit counties was estimated at 60% of the total population. Think about that. More than half of every man, woman, and child in those areas died instantly. Whole family bloodlines ended that morning, erased from history before they even had a chance to survive.
Entire towns that had existed for centuries simply ceased to exist on that cold January morning.
The cultural knowledge, the crafts, the traditions, the stories of those communities, all of it vanished forever. Now here is something that scientists figured out only centuries later that will genuinely blow your mind. The Shaanxi region sits on top of one of the most seismically active fault systems in Asia. But in 1556, no one on Earth had any understanding of tectonic plates or earthquake science at all. People believed the earthquake was divine punishment sent from heaven for the sins of the emperor. Temples were rebuilt first before homes because leaders thought prayer mattered more than actual disaster relief. That decision alone cost thousands of additional lives that could have been saved with faster, smarter action. And here is where it gets even more haunting when you sit and really think about it. Chan Keita actually wrote in his survivor account exactly how to survive future earthquakes with simple actions. He said, "Do not run, do not panic, find open space, and protect your head immediately." He figured this out through pure observation in the middle of absolute chaos and total destruction. His advice from 1556 lines up almost perfectly with what modern earthquake safety experts still tell us today. One man, 500 years ago, wrote the earthquake survival guide that the whole world eventually needed. The Shaanxi earthquake also permanently changed the physical landscape of an enormous part of central China. New lakes formed overnight where flat farmland used to be just the day before the quake. Rivers changed course by several miles, cutting new paths through land that farmers had worked for centuries. Mountains shifted position, and entire cliff faces that had stood for thousands of years simply disappeared. The land itself was rewritten by a single geological event that lasted less than 2 full minutes.
830,000 people lost their lives because of where they were born and how they lived. Not because of war, not because of hatred, just because the earth decided to move that morning. And the leaders who could have helped them faster chose ritual over rescue and prayer over action. That pattern, powerful people responding too slowly to disasters of the poor, did not end in 1556. We have seen it repeat itself across every century, every culture, and every corner of this planet. The Shaanxi earthquake is not just a death toll, it is a mirror held up to all of humanity. It asks us whether we actually learned anything at all from the worst morning in recorded human history. And honestly, the answer to that question should make every single one of us deeply uncomfortable right now. If this story hit you the way it hit me, drop a comment below and tell me your reaction. Subscribe to History Lab right now, because we find the stories that the rest of history buried deep.